Then you get sort of conglomerates that only Victorians would ever have dreamt of doing. So you've now got a cylinder fall over a Canterbury with an overmantle on top.
Davenport style as well.
Yeah.
It's got a bit of everything in that. They tried to do everything with that.
And that's what makes it Victorian. It could not be anything but the quality you can't fault. Marvellous inlay.
It's trying to be super functional.
Yeah, one-stop shop.
One-stop shop, yeah.
Again, worth more money
One-man
15 years ago,
Yeah.
20 years ago. Quite a valuable piece then.
Yeah, but now...
Right.
Still that should make £1,000, 800 to 1,000.
Well, probably, yes, because, I mean, there are two people like me and probably like it just for its odiosity. Yeah. But it missed... These are clumsy from a design point of view. But you can just imagine them. What should we put on the bottom? Why don't we put curved feet? Well, I tell you what, let's offer in our catalogue straight feet, turned feet, or curved, right? So it's like a Chinese menu, you know. Well, we'll have the feet like that, and the base like that, and the fall like so.
So all these pieces would be machine made, and then they would be fitted by a fitter.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And of course, I have to show the archetypal sewing box that everybody had, the ice cream cone, usually dreadful quality, like this, carved, and we said last time with like a butter knife, never mind a carving machine. This is redeemed by a little bit of inlay there, and cross-banded moulding, but otherwise pretty ghastly things really. And the lid always broke because there was two little hinges on. If you've got a hexagonal or an octagonal, you can only hinge it there, and it over goes the lid.
Bang, and it will snap off every single time.
I put that in. That's in my book, modestly entitled John Bly's Masterclass.
Oh, where is that?
Oh, well, I'm so glad you
got it here? Have you brought one with you,
just
John?
by chance. There, that's the book. Yes.
It is a great read.
Yes,
so.
it is a great read. I've made a few little marks in here so we don't waste a lot of time looking. And I put that in, and of course I can't find it. Should we just skip that? Let's look at the picture itself. It's in the book. I put that in because you have this lovely Tudor hairstyle of this young lady, right? So there's a bit of almost pre-Tudor, with a very, very historic type of halter neckline, with a fan, a Japanese fan, some fire irons, and note this type of fender which came in after the 1800s, this sort of wall fender, with a bevel in it. And they found that...
And pierced, they all seem to be pierced.
Well, yes, and early fenders were always flat, but a fairly thick gauge metal. And they found that if they made the metal thinner, it wasn't stable. But if you put a corrugation in it, it makes it look like corrugated iron. That's why you always get a bubble right the way around on a Victorian fender. And then, of course, the totally impractical curtains over the fireplace, which caught fire. And in the back there, a grandfather's clock. Well, of course, none of that would all tie together except in the 1860s, 1870s, perhaps a little later, in almost the aesthetic movement. I think I've got another. Yes, this is one of my favourite pictures. It shows a young lady in the 1870s, 1880s, and you've got here a Dutch chair, a Dutch commode, a Delft bowl, a Chinese teapot, an English ceramic vase on its stand, the Adam style, a little English rosewood, one of a set of 4 quartetto tables, an old master in the background, and of course a nice fern. And there,
Tudor work, Elizabethan, Tudor work there as well.
And that leads us to the one I was going to show you, if I can find it. Here, if you could show that to everybody.
Oh, wow.
That, to me, is the epitome of an English interior. And you read that just down there.
Interior of 18 Stafford Terrace, London, purchased by Edward Linley Sanborn.
Right.
In 1874.
Now, by 1874, that was everybody's aspiration. And you have Chinese plates, Dutch prints, Dutch furniture, English furniture, Oriental pieces from all over the world.
It's a mini exhibition
Absolutely.
in your parlour.
And we call it we did call it our heritage. But that was what people, the fashionable look of a house was. Okay.
That's from the great exhibition there as we're on it.
Yes. Well, we've dealt with that.
We've dealt with that, of course. Sorry.
We've done that to death, nearly. See how we're getting on here. Then we have the Egyptian revival. And all of these revivals...
When the Egyptian empire, it's sort of an empire style as well, isn't it?
And of course then we had Mikado, Aida. So with Japanese designs we had the Mikado. With the Egyptian revival we
What is the Mikado?
Mikado, the show.
The show,
the musical.
sorry. Yes, sorry. Sorry.
Yes. I was going to say Rodgers and Hammerstein, but it's totally wrong. Yes, the Mikado. Aida, that was an opera, right?
Uneducated, that's my problem sometimes. Sorry about that, John. Ignore me. Just go to the viewer. I'm not here, so it's fine.
Oh, thank God you made a fluff as well. So we have Egyptian-style seat here, okay? After the 1870s, when they opened up the Suez Canal. And then you find most of the Egyptian revival is in jewellery. Very strong jewellery movement, as you know, from the last 20 years of the 19th century. Japanese. Now, it wouldn't be fair to not mention one of the great bits of Japanese stroke Anglo furniture or Anglo-Japan furniture. In 1874, just prior to the Great Exhibition at that time, Collinson and Locke made some hinges, and Chubbs made some locks for a cabinet designed by Bruce Talbot in the Egyptian style to take little Japanese enamel and silver panels, which were produced by the people that used to manufacture the arms and armour in Japan. And this is from a cabinet. And you can see all, of course, Japanese scenes are emblematic. They all tell a story. They have humour. And they were set, we didn't fully understand, but we could appreciate. These are actually from the development of the seasons, okay, on this cabinet. But you see distinctly Egyptian style in the setting. So it's quite an interesting thing. And this combination is something to be looked for when you're searching around. And it's quite obvious when you see it if you've been told about it. But otherwise it's easy to mix.
And you can see that. So what about the japanned papier-mâché furniture and the lacquer, Japanese lacquer? You see a lot of that.
Yes,
that comes through bright red with the gilt and stuff. Well, what sort of times were they?
Well, the lacquer work itself, the early lacquer, of course, from the 17th century, yes, we imported, yes, was always black. There are two types of lacquer. One is a red cinnabar lacquer, which in size you cut into. So we'll put that aside because it's a totally different process. Lacquering is made of gum of the lac tree, and you paint on coat after coat after coat, and gradually build up until you get that depth of colour and quality. But the gum itself has to be cured. You can't use it as it is. You have to not boil it, but warm it and steam, and so that steam comes out of it. And all the evils come out, and then you can work it. And the great lacquer master can then start to produce his works of art. Unfortunately, rather like the evaporation of mercury, the evaporations from the fumes from lacquer are lethal. But only in the Orient would you have such devotion that people would actually line up to stir the lacquer, pass away, and somebody else will step up, simply for the honour of curing the lacquer. We couldn't do that. We didn't understand that. So we tried, and we couldn't quite manufacture it. We didn't know how to do that. So in the late 17th century, the 1690s, two men called Stalker and Parker produced their own treatise on how to do it in England. The other thing we couldn't understand was that lacquer dries in the wet. It doesn't dry in the dry. So to dry lacquer, to harden it, you have to put it in a steam room. It didn't make any sense to us. So you put a bit of lacquer out in the sunshine. It was 6 months later and it's still sticky. Yeah. Wow. So we introduced our own lacquer, which we made up in various materials and various substances, and produced English lacquer in Chinese and Japanese style. Japanning is what it was called. It came from China, came from Japan as well. It came from India. First we called it India work because our geography wasn't very good, not better than mine. Yeah. But we'd got it, and it was a substance that we could use, but not content with leaving it alone as black lacquer with lovely gold work on, we produced it in primary colours. So you get green lacquer, black lacquer, blue, yellow, red. It will be English lacquer from the 17th and early 18th centuries. In the 19th century, both Oriental countries found that we were buying all these different colours, so they started to produce it. Produce it as well. Okay. And in a much cheaper form. So the little lacquer panels you find on your bamboo furniture, the quality will be evident. Mm-hmm. Chinese lacquer screens of the 19th century are always beautiful, but the depth of the lacquer will not be there. Okay. That sort of, you just look into that black space and it's wonderful. Yeah. It isn't there. It's good, but it's different. Okay, we must move on.
Sorry, thank you.
So now we come to revivals of our own early furniture. So we had a Chippendale revival and we had a Sheraton revival. Okay, and they're quite easy to spot when they are of the period. So this is quite obviously a 19th century Georgian chair, right, if that makes sense. It has its cabriole legs, it has a serpentine front, it has a vase-shaped back, it has a lovely hoop back from the Queen Anne. So you've got Queen Anne, you've got George I, you've got George III, and you've got the Sheraton period here, all in one. That is unmistakably 19th century. The problem came when, in the 1920s, you couldn't sell plain 18th century furniture. It had to be high-end Chippendale or high-end Sheraton. Now, Chippendale would carve. The furniture was carved. The best furniture was carved. And it had to look like, and we've seen that already. You remember in the first talk, where the carving stood proud of the outline.
Whereas the Victorian, what was the later one, they would carve into the existing wood.
Exactly. So what do you do with the Sheraton furniture, which wasn't carved? This was merely inlaid. The best was inlaid. Well, the easy thing to do is to put some inlay into it.
So they'd carve a...
So they would make a hole in, let's put this down here, they would make a hole in a table, in the top of a table, and they would insert little astragals like this. Okay, so there's a little piece of marquetry, made in exactly the same way as the original, except it's paper, not very thick, it's a 1/16 of an inch, far too thin to have been hand cut. But nevertheless, it's shaded in the traditional way by dipping in hot sand. And on the back, you'll see it says the graphic. That's cut out of an old magazine. That's pattern number 307. So you're in a workshop and you have a little table and you want 4 of those, one in each corner like that. Okay. You say, I want 4 number 307s, please. And the factory in Germany would send you these. And you would dig a hole in the tabletop and you'd stick them in.
Wow.
Now, how do you... And then in the middle, you could put... Probably that would be nice. A little thing like that. A little shell. This is a bit of sycamore, which is dyed with oxide of iron. And that's number 195.
Well, this is fascinating as well to the viewer, because you've got the green outside, which is the iron oxide, you said, that's been put into the wood.
Harewood, we call it harewood, but it's actually sycamore dyed with oxide of iron.
And harewood. So this is the colour that you would get on a shell inlaid piece. Yeah. But now no one sees that colour anymore.
No.
because this has been locked away, you've got the original colour coming out. So it's actually a rare treat to see something like this right now.
And if you, I'm only just spitting on this, but you see the colour coming through now? When it's French polish, that's what it would look like. See?
Wow.
I haven't actually got French, I'm not eating French polish. Might be a drop of gin. There you go.
So much more vibrant. So much more vibrant. People don't say, they just say boring brown furniture, but when you look at what's actually been going on.
Yeah, but so how do you tell? Because I mean the difference in price.
Look at the colour. Yeah, look at the colour of that. And this is...
The difference in price, though, is quite large. Yeah. You know, if you've got a particularly fine little table with its original decoration in, is, well, I don't know, say £5,000, and one that's plain and been redone is 250. You need to know how to tell. Well, firstly, you look obliquely against the light, and you will see the surface will dip where the pieces have been inlaid, because in order to inlay properly, you have to dig out the surface, then you have to put this piece in, then you've got to polish out to get it universal.
So you see a slight...
And there's a slight dip. There will always be a slight dip.
Very good tip. Okay.
Now, remember also that when these things were made, if you take our little example, now let's take this chappie here. Right. When this was made, the panel was inlaid, marquetry panel was put on, and the glue, sorry, the glue was forced through from underneath. Yeah. Remember, we had to push a veneer cork. And over the years, the glue will have eased through these joints and caused a little tiny raised line. So when you feel it, it's sensitive.
A slight little ripple on that.
Yeah. And when you look obliquely to an original piece, it will be perfectly flat, except there will be these little lines, which is the glue crystals having come through and caught the dirt over the years, what we call patina. It is actually dirt, and it's caught in there, and you can see it and you can feel it. You can't create it, but if it isn't there, it's being skinned down for one reason or another. If it's there, then it's fine. If it's not there, it should be.
It's a later piece. Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
Fascinating.
Well, yes, I think we've nearly spun out now. There's a bit of really nasty 19th century.
That is horrible.
Yes. Also, you'll find that when these pieces were inlaid, they were repolished. And to get a quick grain fill, rather than spending hours filling the grain, rubbing down, filling the grain, rubbing down, cutting back, in fact, like you do on a good car, right? Instead of that, they filled it with pea flour. And it was dyed with a colouring, which faded and left the white in the grain showing. So immediately you see that, you know it's been French polished or later polished around about 1920, 1890 to 1920. Okay, this didn't happen before. They didn't use that in the 18th century. You'll never ever see that. It can be an 18th century piece, but if it looks like that, it's been redone.
Redone, yeah.
I think we ought to end on a high note and say that Victorian furniture, some of it was really lovely. And those are two of the best little
salon chairs.
Side salon chairs that you could ever wish to see.
Absolutely stunning. And they weren't machine carved, were they?
No.
No, they're hand carved. Sure. The quality there is just amazing. Yes.
And inlaid with ivorine. The first plastic, actually man-made plastic, about 1852, I think probably showed at the exhibition. But anyway, this is ivorine.
But for these to stay intact, because they're quite, not fragile, but they're delicate, aren't they?
Yes, but of course they were using satin wood, which is so strong. It's a really strong material. And it's got everything in it. As I say, little ivory, pateraille here, the Adam style. Beautiful taper, of its type. You know, it's not actually trying to be retro. It's not actually trying to reproduce. It is using the best designs that they had to call on and then making something really quite beautiful out of it, of its own time, which I think is quite forgivable. These lovely vases that just a great shape. So I thought we'd end with a nice upholstery, and something really good. And I thought it might amuse you to look at my grandfather's shop.
John was born in there, weren't you, John?
Upstairs.
Upstairs.
Yes. And you think the antique business is a strange world. The little girl on the left is my father.
Wow, really?
Yes.
Fantastic.
That's because he wasn't breeched at that age, you see.
And what year was this, roughly?
1907. He was 3.
Fantastic.
That was my aunt. They are furniture bought and sold or exchanged.
And he still does so today, ladies and gentlemen. So if you've got anything, get in touch with John. He'll either buy it or tell you how to sell it. John, thank you so much, sir. It's been wonderful to just to listen to the wealth of knowledge that you've got on the history of furniture. And thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, tell your friends, book in until the next episode of Antiques Masterclass. A big thank you to John, and a big goodbye to me till the next time, Addison Gelpie. Thank you kindly.